What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phaithful Phanatics show here on DSM-Media's Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube channel. Guys, first and foremost, if you are new to the channel, make sure to check us out on Twitter at DSM_media. Check out the link in our bio for the link tree. It will take you to every social media platform we are available on. If you guys want to be interactive throughout any of our shows here at DSM, make sure to check out the YouTube channel specifically. It is the best spot to get your thoughts, comments, and questions pulled up here on the screen with your host. I am one half of them today, Dylan Davis. You can find me on Twitter at DylanJD98. And sitting in the co-host chair today for my man Scotty, special guest, Mr. Sean Barnard. Guys, you can find him on Twitter at Sean_Barnard1. He is a Sixers writer for Philadelphia Sports Network. He is a Sixers insider for Fox the Gambler. He is the founder of Pick Swap Media. Man, is there anywhere that people can't find your content?
I do my best to get it out there, but yeah, big shoes to fill with Scotty being out. Cool sitting in the co-host seat for him. Shout out to him at his honeymoon doing his thing, but excited to talk some birds and everything else today.
Yeah, man. So, guys, like I said, if you couldn't tell by his bio there, Sean does a lot of work for the Sixers, the flag in the background. We might get to them. We might, man. And normally that's what I talk to you about with Scotty. But today we got some Eagles to talk about. We'll talk some Phillies playoffs because you are all around a Philly fan and you get into all of it now, man, because you are so busy. But let's start with that Monday night victory. Eagles over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Defense was dominant. Jalen Hurts, Brian Johnson still figuring their issues out, but nonetheless, the Birds are 3-0 on this short season. Is that the biggest takeaway so far? That the fact that this team hasn't even played B to B plus football and they don't have a loss yet on the young season?
Yeah, I mean, the 3-0 is 3-0, and it hasn't been the prettiest. It hasn't been the toughest competition, but the results are still there. And I think that is the biggest takeaway. For me, I felt better about last night's game than I have about the first two. There's still definitely plenty that the ceiling can be raised on, and it is far from their best football, but it felt a little more like an Eagles win to me as far as them controlling the trenches. The defensive line was incredibly dominant once again. We saw them causing issues. DeAndre Swift looks like the real deal. The difference in DeAndre Swift is astounding at the running back spot. So overall, they did get the job done. I'm still pretty happy with what I saw and still pretty excited to see what's to come because I believe the ceiling's way higher.
Yeah, you said it looked like classic Eagles from last year a little bit, more so than the first 2 weeks. And you had a 9-minute game-ending drive just to eat and chew the clock away. Tampa Bay didn't even use their 2 timeouts when it came to the 2-minute warning. Obviously, we knew they didn't have a shot. They would have needed a score, an onside kick, another score, just a tie, whatever the case may be. But they didn't even attempt to do so, man. But I guess my biggest – not worry, but my biggest concern so far is with the offense, obviously, and it's with Jalen Hurts and Brian Johnson so far. And the one thing that frustrated me more than anything last night was the red zone offense. And tell me this, do you put more of that, I guess, blame or concern early on Jalen Hurts, or do you put it on them trying to figure it out with the new OC? Because they mix up the pass and the run between the 20s, right? They were great at it last night. And then it's almost like they get inside the 15 and there's a struggle and there's no balance to the game plan inside the red zone last night. It was either get inside the 15 and we're going to run, or we get inside the 15 and it's drop back.
Mm-hmm.
What do you attribute that to? Is it Jalen struggles? Is it Brian Johnson? Does Nick have his hand in the cookie jar again in terms of play calling?
Yeah, I mean, he might. I think the biggest issue, I agree that it's an issue, the red zone stuff. It just feels like Jalen and Brian Johnson not quite being on the same page. Like there's still a little bit of miscommunication and still figuring each other out. Even you look at like that first interception by Jalen last night, it was purely having the signals cross, not being on the same page. It's that kind of issues. Like I don't think it's Jalen misreading things. I don't think it's him having trouble executing. I think it's simply just making sure that they're on the same page, expectations are in the same place for everyone. So I think that's going to be a learning process throughout the year as far as them getting better at that. And like we mentioned, it's at least they're doing this with a 3-0 record behind them, that they're still figuring things out while staying in the win column. So I can't be too upset about it or too concerned about it, but that's definitely an area that they need to figure things out. I think some of that is the balance of them just figuring out what the if you hit the nail on the head as far as it feels like it's all run or no run. Like there doesn't feel like the same balance there. And a lot of these play calls, like going for the on 4th and 1 when you kind of do the delay and things like that I'm just not quite loving. So I don't know. I feel like that over the season, it's going to continue to get better. I think Hurts hasn't quite looked as sharp overall as well, and I do think that's a factor in things. But I think for the most part that it is just them getting on the same page completely.
Speaking of red zone play calling, the 3rd and 2 fake tush push. How
Yeah,
did you feel about it, man? As a guy who needed one more Eagles touchdown to cash his bet last night, it hurt me because the only thing they couldn't have happen was to lose yardage. Because even if they don't get it on 3rd and goal and they're still at the 1 or 2, they're most likely going to push it from the 2 or 1 from there, right? He trips, they lose 5 or 6 yards, they end up kicking the field goal. How'd you feel about it? Obviously, it's something I think actually the broadcast mentioned it. Maybe you keep that in your bag for later on down the road against the San Fran or against the Kansas City when no one knows you're going to pull that out. To pull it out up 15 or whatever against the Bucs on Monday Night Football in the 4th quarter. Did you like it? Did you not like it?
Yeah, I didn't like it. I'll give him points for creativity, I guess. Like, I do think that's something to have in the back pocket or at least have thought about, but I did not like pulling it out there. It
Man.
obviously did not work. And for the most part, I think they're just kind of outsmarting themselves in the situation. That let's not.
Too cute.
Yeah, we're getting too cute. Don't overcomplicate things. They can't stop this. Let's run this again. And that to me should still be the mindset with the tush push. That
even if they stopped it on 3rd and goal, you run it again like you did the first time Jalen scored on in the first half from it, or to start the second half from it. Another thing they're getting cute with, and you mentioned RB1 early on in the show, and you mentioned the interception with DeAndre Swift and the miscommunication. Man, Brian, they need to get on the same page with this as where the fan base is, right? Because it's pretty damn clear and obvious who the most talented running back is in that group. And maybe, they gave him some rest and they didn't feel the need to keep running them up 3 scores late in the 4th quarter. And that's why Kenny Gainwell got the bulk of the work. But it still felt, no matter how dominant DeAndre Swift was, 16 carries, $130, averaging over 8 yards per run last night, Kenneth Gainwell still got 14 carries. It was almost 50-50 split. Now, again, maybe that's the end of the game situation. There's no need for DeAndre to be out there. We're chewing clock with Kenny, whatever. But it's too much for me, man. You still saw too much Kenny Gainwell. 4th and 1, 4th and 2, first drive of the game after Swift's running all over them. Let me put Kenny Gainwell in, and he gets tackled short of the line again. Is it obvious, Sean, who RB1 is?
I think it should be. It absolutely should be DeAndre Swift. There's just a different punch, a different way that he cuts, that when he has the ball in his hands, he's just more dangerous than we see with Kenny Gainwell. And I don't hate Kenny Gainwell. I don't even mind him being in the mix. Him. Yeah, there are opportunities for him for sure. But as far as the running back one, when you look at the depth chart, DeAndre Swift should absolutely be number 1, and that should be clear to everyone. I also am not 100% sure why we haven't gotten a look at Rashad Penny yet either. That I would love to at least see what he's got or throw him in the mix, other than it's been very confusing, the rotation of running backs, as far as it's like we're rotating guys for a bell cow spot when that takes away the whole point of it to me. It's either you throw these change ups, you give these guys opportunities, or you stick with the hot hand. And especially when you're kind of taking the hot hand out of things, like what more do you want Swift to do with his opportunities to prove things? For me, he's done everything I've hoped for and more, and it should be his job completely.
Well, and the thing for me with Nick's comments about riding the hot hand, and I don't necessarily disagree when you have a stable of guys who can get you production, but my issue is, like, what happens down the line when you're playing, let's say, a San Francisco defense or a Dallas Cowboy defense? Well, maybe not the Dallas Cowboy defense after what they did against Arizona, but and you're facing a run defense like that. And what if, Swift doesn't have the hot hand on the first drive or 2 of the game? Are you just going to go away from him? Like, to me, when you have such a clear and obvious talent gap between running back 1 and running back 2, because I think that's what it is. It's a pretty big gap for me.
Yeah.
There is no hot hand to ride. It should be DeAndre Swift's team. And not to say you're going to live or die with him, but he's the guy, and Kenneth Gainwell and Rashad Penny should be sparing him to a point. It shouldn't be a 50-50 split. It shouldn't be, well, he doesn't have it today. It's Kenny G's time. I think the frustrating thing for me, man, like, you hit the nail right on the head with it. I like him, right? Like, he's a solid rotational back. He's a change of pace kind of guy. He can pass catch a little bit out of the backfield. That's all well and good. Whatever this fascination is that they have with Kenneth Gainwell all off season long, throughout the preseason, you heard them talk, like, basically giving him all the praise. In week 1, he was the guy. He was the bell cow, right? I don't get it. And you have all these great football minds in that building. Well, they should be great football minds, right? And you have just us fans watching, talking about it on a podcast. What the hell do they see that we don't?
Yeah, and it feels like Kenny Gainwell, and again, I don't want to like come down on the guy. I like him as well, but he's a very just traditional, boring, straightforward back. That he is what he is. You're not getting more than that, and that's fine. That there is a use for that. For the most part, he's good at what he does, but there's just more to be untapped when you have a DeAndre Swift who is able to make guys miss or has this shiftiness and cutting ability in the hole that Gainwell just does not. Gainwell's going to get you these straightforward yards. He'll soak up his 4 yards of carry, put his head down, and go down with the tackle. There's just a little more juice with Swift. I think that should be noted, and that should be something that is rewarded, that when a guy can do this, when he can create things out of nothing in the way that we're really seeing with Swift, that it feels like each run there's an extra 3-4 yards that he pulls out of nowhere. That's what you want in a running back. And again, I don't know what more he could do from his position as far as earning things. So I would like to see it continue to trend toward it being handed hit for the full-time number one carries.
It's just a confidence thing for me, man. Like there were times last night when Swift was in the backfield and I'm sitting here on, 1st and 10 and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a run. And with Swift, you're shocked when it's only a 2-yard run or he's hit at the line of scrimmage. When Kenny G's in, I'm like, well, this is only going for 2 or 3. That's not always the case. He popped a couple 8-yard runs last night, but yeah, man, here's the thing. We're going to get off the offense here in a second. Obviously, Dallas Goedert hasn't been much of a factor through 3 weeks. AJ Brown had over $130, $140 last night. Devontae Smith up and down. So that's the thing for me, right? This offense hasn't played really better than a C all year long. At times in week 2, I guess they were better, but they have not really played B+ football yet, and they are still 3-0. They're finding ways to move the ball up and down the field. And that's the thing that I think you have to be optimistic about right now is if this team was just stalling out, if you were seeing 3 and outs after 3 and outs like you saw in New England week 1, then I think there'd be more cause for concern. But the fact that they're moving the ball so easily against a good Tampa Bay defense last night, man, like don't get that twisted. Like, yeah, we can make jokes about Baker and everyone got so hyped when he was 2-0. That defense is still almost a championship caliber defense. They were missing Carlton Davis, but they're still very talented, and the Eagles move the ball up and down the field on them. So you have to be optimistic that they're going to figure those red zone problems out as the year goes on with a new play caller. The defense, though. The defense was as dominant can get last night. Reed Blankenship with a pick. Jalen Carter with a forced fumble. James Bradbury recovers it. They were all over Baker last night. What stands out about the defense the most for you right now?
For me, I'll start at the defensive line. That the push that is just every down off the snap is insane. And it's Jordan Davis, it's Jalen Carter, it's Fletcher Cox having his moments. It's all these guys that just feel like they're succeeding. And I can't believe that for the next decade, we really could be looking at Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter being the guys providing this push for the Eagles, and just be mixing in casual guys like Fletcher Cox right now is pretty insane to me. So it is pretty cool for them to be able to dictate the line of scrimmage like that on both sides of the ball, win the games in the trenches. That's what Eagles football is about. And we're really seeing that come together with this team. So for me, I felt like they kind of controlled the pace of play with the push that they got off the line of the scrimmage. That's something I think that the Eagles are going to have an advantage week in and week out for. And I think that's only going to get better as far as that when the season goes on, rotating guys and them fully, I guess, getting in a cohesive unit. But for me, I thought the defensive line was awesome, and that kind of controlled the pace of play last night.
And you haven't even heard from Hassan Reddick yet. Like that's the beautiful thing about it. Like 16 and a half sacks from a season ago hasn't even been heard from so far this year. And you just expect that to change, right? Along, like we said, with the offense. You mentioned Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, and they should be almost everybody's storyline across the board. Yeah. What was so amazing to see last night was for so many years from the moment that Fletch was drafted here and how dominant he was over his prime, right? We were begging for them to bring in another D tackle to help him out because it was double team, triple team, double team, triple team. And you get Timmy Jernigan the Super Bowl year, you get Javon Hargrave, and you're hoping that he sees less double teams, but it never felt easier for Fletch. Last night, the rookie takes on a double team and Fletcher Cox gets one-on-one and disrupts a play and gets to Baker Mayfield, man. It was like all these years, it's finally paying off with the first-round draft pick for Fletcher Cox, man. But Jalen Carter's something else. The fact that all that the Chicago Bears passed on him twice, the fact that the Detroit Lions traded out of the top 10 to go draft a running back that they don't use correctly, again, a la DeAndre Swift. It's too funny to me, man. This kid so far is the best player from this draft class.
Oh, yeah.
And they talked about it. They said outside of quarterback, if you're not, talking about quarterbacks, he might be the best football player in this draft class. Obviously, Will Anderson went, what did he go? Number 3 overall to the Texans or whatever, number 2, I forget.
I think. Yeah.
But Jalen Carter is paying off. I got to ask you this. Is this a Sean Desai thing? Is this a new thing going forward where I feel like if this is Gannon, I feel like if this is last year, Jalen Carter's got training wheels on, and Jalen Carter's just a cog in a machine. He's part of a rotation, which he is, but he wouldn't be on the field as much. He wouldn't be on the field in key third downs. Sean Desai took those training wheels off from day one and said, go get him. And that's what he's done so far.
Yeah, I mean, some of this overcomplicating things when we talk about, just play your best players. If Jalen Carter has already proven that he is the best player, then give him the minutes, give him the reps, give him the opportunities to continue proving that. So I am happy to be seeing that. I still think that there's a little bit of training wheels on, just the way they're rotating guys and the way that, like, I don't think we're ever going to see him be the every down, getting snapped every play in and play out the way I think long-term we will, that I think he will become that guy, become a Pro Bowl level guy who is the Jalen Carter, the monster that we're expecting him to grow into. For now, I think I like the idea of rotating these guys, keeping everyone fresh. We got a season long of rushing the quarterback, causing havoc, and that is going to kind of dictate the ceiling of this team, specifically with the defense. And as a whole, I think as good as the defensive line is, that's how good this Eagles team can be. So I think continuing to get all these guys opportunities is a good thing. And then for the next decade, we still have this guy, Jalen Carter, and Jordan Davis right next to him, creating this push. Jordan Davis has also impressed me a ton too. I think he's gotten significantly better than last year.
Rachaad White hit a hole at one point last night, and it looked like it was going to be a nice chunk. And Jordan Davis from the side just basically gave him a hug, and Rachaad White stopped in his tracks, could not take another step.
Jordan Davis is one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen. He is.
Oh, it's crazy. They were highlighting Vita Vea, and Vita Vea is a humongous man.
Yeah.
Jordan Davis looks like he would swallow him.
Yeah.
It's nuts, man. But Reed Blankenship comes back healthy, gets the pick. James Bradbury, I thought you didn't really notice him. There was one third down play that they hit with Chris Godwin for a first down. Outside of that, I thought James Bradbury's transition to the slot really helped his team, and kudos to him for taking that assignment last night. However, that conversation went about him moving from a spot where he's essentially an all-pro corner on the outside to the inside to help this team win. It worked out well last night, man. But this Eagles defense was really, really good against the team that, was probably being a little overhyped through 2 weeks with being led by Baker Mayfield. But the fact of the matter is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I believe, hadn't turned the ball over through the first 2 weeks of the season. Baker Mayfield was 21 of 23 or 21 of 24 on third down attempts throughout the first 2 weeks. And they really put a stop to that, man. So the Eagles defense was good. The safety, right, on the one. I mean, that took all of a snap of a finger. Jalen turns it over. Every time the opposing team gets the ball in that spot, you always think, you always hoping, get the interior rush and let's get it safe. It never works out that way. Last night, the linebackers blew it up. Morrow blows it up and they get the safety, right? But the defense was really good. I had one more Eagles question for you, and it's slipping my mind. It is truly slipping my mind. That's what it was. You mentioned kind of Jalen Carter with the training wheels and kind of keeping him in that rotation fresh because of the long season. And with that long season comes a deep playoff run expectation. And I think we as fans have to kind of balance that, right? The goal is to win each week. And the coaching staff knows that. But there's also long-term goals this organization and this fan base has where we have to understand, Jordan Davis might not start over Milton Williams right now, might not play as much as you'd like him to, or Jalen Carter as well, because we're going to need him in January, right? Yeah. That's a thing we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think that's all these expectations. That's why we're still being critical while the Eagles are 3-0 right now. Yes, that beats the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 10 times out of 10 last night. Probably doesn't beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's kind of the unfortunate reality, or fortunate if you want to look at it. They still have a ways to get there, and grow into a team that can be. I still think we're far from seeing the best Eagles football this year,
Yeah.
and they still sit with a perfect record. So to me, that is a good thing. I do think that the Super Bowl expectations are why people are still being so critical,
100%.
myself included, of it. But that's a good thing. It is when you have a bar that high, it's difficult to reach, but that keeps the standard high, and that's something they're going to continue to be aiming
I
for
agree.
as well.
I agree. And they love to talk about the standard, right? 1%
Yeah.
better every day.